Our next presenter is Isaac Olsen. Isaac is a double major in environmental studies and oceanography, graduating in June of 2024. He's been on the dean's list throughout his time here at UW. Isaac's list of accolades is actually too long for me to cover right now, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of things. He was a 2022 NOAA Holland Scholar. He was an REU at Wrigley Institute for Environmental Science, and he served as the UW College of the Environment Student Advisory Council member. Now, this next summer, Isaac will be working with Oregon Sea Grant as a summer scholar, helping to expand their outreach, communication, and data sovereignty initiatives. And in fall, he'll be back here at the university pursuing a master's degree in the School of Marine and Environmental Affairs. Doing good, doing good. The title of Isaac's presentation is Well-Being Over Waste, Engaging Youth on Addressing Plastic Pollution. His host organization was Environment Washington, where his site supervisor was Pam Pope, and his faculty advisor here on campus was Christy Strauss, whom I've known for at least 20 years. All right, let's turn it over to Isaac.
Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me? Great. I was traumatized by the 2006 film Happy Feet, and this clip should explain why. It's muted for copyright reasons, but everyone imagine a penguin is violently choking to death while all of his friends are pleading for his life. And then imagine me watching that at 4. And tragically, as tragic as that scene is, real life is more tragic. 20 million tons of plastic enter our waters every year. And about half of all marine mammal and seabird species have found to have plastic in them. And this issue is not going away because plastic lasts for so long in the environment. And it also affects humans. Microplastics are being increasingly found in our bodies, and plastic pollution disproportionately harms marginalized communities. It also is linked to climate change. The plastic industry accounts for 8% of all US oil production. And yet, plastic production has continued to skyrocket, largely driven by corporations and single-use plastics. And in Washington, only 17% of plastic packaging is actually recycled. And 11 counties have no curbside recycling at all, highlighting the problems with our system. That's where EPR comes in. EPR is a system that holds corporations responsible for the post-consumer management of materials. Or more simply, corporations that are using plastic have to pay for that usage, and that goes into recycling or reduction initiatives. However, most people don't know about EPR, especially the youth, who are the people who are going to be most affected. That's why it's important to determine the most effective outreach methods to communicate EPR to youth and how to get youth to further engage. And doing this work, I was working with Environment Washington, a grassroots lobbying organization that has worked on a bunch of environmental campaigns, including supporting EPR efforts in Washington in 2023 and 2024. I was a communication intern, and I was working on online efforts such as email outreach and in-person efforts, including planning an in-person lobby day and giving presentations to students. And a lot of my work centered on presenting the Students That Oppose Plastic Pollution sign-on letter, which was delivered to legislators during this session to show student support. It also included a survey on further engagement strategies, and the 287 signers, in addition to my own observations during outreach, informed these findings on effective messaging, methods, and engagement. And in terms of messaging, the key things to note are context and climate. EPR is esoteric, so it requires some explanation. You need to address critiques and showcase why it matters and why it's so effective. And youth are also really receptive to climate messaging, both because we're uniquely impacted and because climate isn't usually talked about in terms of plastic. Plastic is usually just trash. In terms of methods, you can see that throughout my internship, I was trying to promote the student letter to as many people as I could, including both people I knew and people I didn't. And showed on this graph in dark is the amount of people who signed based on my own networks. And that's 4 times the number contacted through organic outreach. And in addition, the medium of outreach is also really important. Online efforts are averaged here and the replies. And you can see that in gray, 50% of all people contacted over email didn't even open our emails, and only 7% actually took the action that we wanted, showcasing how important it is to build on these personal networks. In terms of going beyond that, I discovered that there are some key things to note, and that is what I call the effort paradox. People were much more likely to engage in low effort actions like sharing a letter, because let's face it, it's way easier to do that. But the high effort actions like attending a lobby day or writing a letter to the editor, while requiring extra effort, were more fulfilling. These things often require a lot more resources, but students who got those were way more likely to stay engaged for longer terms. And this is really important for both Environment Washington and other orgs. We've seen how powerful it is for youth to get engaged on something. Look at how we've driven change all across the world and at home on things from the climate crisis to Palestine. And being able to use that outreach strategies working for EPR and transitioning that into other movements is really important for driving long-lasting change and making sure that we have sustainable environments, futures, and livelihoods throughout this. And this is specifically important in Washington. One, our recycling methods are inequitable and ineffective. Communicating EPR and eventually passing legislation can help remedy that. And also, as you can see in this photo featuring many students, we want our voices heard, especially on environmental issues. And being able to motivate so many students into getting engaged on this will be critical. EPR is actually a really important microcosm of the inaction that we've seen. Over the past 2 years, EPR has failed in our legislation twice, and that's been only serving to uphold legislation that is going to be ineffective and threaten our futures. We need to ensure that it doesn't fail again unless we want to consign ourselves to a future of choking penguins and hopeless children. Thank you, guys. And thank you to all my advisors and my fellow interns, as well as the Capstone teaching team.
Okay, questions for Isaac on this esoteric topic?
Yeah.
Isaac, I am curious about if you know Oregon passed EPR legislation. I'm sure
Yeah, so the question is, Oregon has already passed this. What do I think of that? And that's actually really important context for why Washington needs to pass this. It's actually the only state in the West Coast, including Vancouver, British Columbia, that doesn't have EPR already. And that means we're lagging behind the rest of our side of the nation. The Oregon EPR studies that have come out have actually shown that it's very effective and does not increase prices on consumers and is providing a perfect model for why we need to pass this in our own state. So it was a great question.
Well, I'm just curious, like, I mean, EPR is like a super powerful, framework for helping control plastic pollution, and I'm just wondering if you feel like states are the correct space for action to take place, or like that ought to be something that should be taking place like that.
Yes. So the question is the state level the correct place for this action, or should it be maybe federal level? And that's also something that's really important in the EPR movement, because the entire EU already has EPR, all Canada has EPR, so it's possible at these larger levels. But in my opinion, this change needs to start local, because that's who's being impacted and knows the complexities of the recycling system right now. The problem with our recycling is that right now it's not standardized even across the state. There are a bunch of places that don't even have access to curbside recycling. The rules are different in each county. So that needs to be standardized first before we can make something standard across the entire country, in my opinion. The question is, what are some of the big challenges in getting it passed? And I think that is one of the reasons I'm here talking today. One of the big problems is that not a lot of people know about this and how effective it is. And a lot of people think that it is going to be worse for the average person than it really will be, largely due to lobbying from corporations who don't want to have to pay extra for their polluting policies. So that's why it's so important to be able to discuss with people, give people context, and emphasize how effective EPR is going to be so that more people can support it when it comes up to legislation again.